Today's Daily Dose of Math is about Principle 14 from Math 4273, the Advanced Secondary 4 Geometry course. Principle 14 states that the product of the lengths of the legs of a right triangle is equal to the product of the length of the hypotenuse and the length of the altitude to the hypotenuse. That's long, but when you're using a list of principles and theorems that's attached to your exam, as people are in this course, you're allowed to justify steps in your process of answering questions by simply saying Principle 14, instead of having to write out that entire sentence. The students in this course also are allowed to make a memory aid, a piece of paper that has on it formulas, diagrams, things that will help them in the exam. And I always recommend to students that they include a diagram like this with this little formula on their memory aid. This is not part of the principle as printed on the exam. So students usually will read this and they will be saying, okay, wait, but what do I do with that? And the diagram and the formula show you how you use it and are therefore more useful. So the list of principles is more to make sure that you are able to find the one that you want to use as justification and correctly give its number. But the diagram and the formula are much more useful for remembering what to do. Let's use Principle 14 to answer these four questions. In A, we are given BH, AB, and BC. We are given the altitude and the two legs of the right triangle, and we are asked how long is AC, how long is the hypotenuse. So, to use this little formula, AB times BC in this case is 3 times 4. And that's equal to AC times BH, which will be 2.4x, are unknown. Therefore, 12 is equal to 2.4x. And when we isolate our variable, x is equal to 5. No unit was given, so I use the word units as my unit. And I say I'm using Principle 14. So I have my answer, and I have justification for the answer. In B, we're given the altitude and the short leg and the hypotenuse, but we're being asked how long is the longer of the two legs. We use the formula the same way, it's just our unknown is in a different place. So we have 6x is equal to 4.8 times 10. 6x is equal to 48. Divide both sides by 6. Isolate your x. X is equal to 8 units. And again, I say I used Principle 14. Because I've used it a second time, so I have to justify my step again. The third one, we're given the altitude, the longer leg, and the hypotenuse, and we're being asked for the shorter leg. So we have 16x is equal to 9.6 times 20. 16x is equal to 192. Divide both sides by 16, isolate our x. X is equal to 12 units. And again, I say that I used Principle 14. Now these triangles might look quite familiar because we have the 3, 4, 5 right triangle, the 6, 8, 10 right triangle, and the 12, 16, 20 right triangle, and these are commonly used to help students practice with Pythagoras' theorem when they're learning Pythagoras' theorem. And that might make a student say, wait, I could have found all three of these answers using Pythagoras' theorem. And in that case, I wouldn't have had to use Principle 14, and I wouldn't have even needed to know the length of the altitude in any of these three cases. So what's the point of Principle 14? Well, the point is that Principle 14 can also be used, as we're going to do in Part D, to find the length of the altitude. So that's a good reason for it to exist, because sometimes you will be asked for an altitude. Let's do D. AB times BC is 9 times 12. It's equal to 15x. 108 is equal to 15x. Divide both sides by 15. X is isolated and is equal to 7.2 units. And I say I used principle 14. I could not have solved this problem with Pythagoras' theorem. So that's a good reason for principle 14 to exist. A good thing to point out here is the fact that if you're not learning Math 4273, if you're in a different curriculum in a different part of the world, you may have a list of principles and theorems, but your number 14 might not be this one. So you have to be careful, and you have to use the list of theorems, principles that comes with your course. Even students in my own classroom, some of them do this advanced geometry course called Math 4273, but other people do another version of the same course that's called Math 4153. And in the Math 4153 exam, the list of principles and theorems, this isn't 14, it's 12. So make sure you're careful to use the list of theorems and the number for the theorem that goes with your course. That is today's Daily Dose of Math. Please like, subscribe, and share.